What if the next global oil empire isn't in the Middle East, but in a tiny rainforest nation few can even find on a map? In this video, we're peeling back the curtain on what might be the biggest energy transformation happening right under the world's nose. From hidden billion-dollar rigs to fast-tracked oil ships, Guyana is becoming an oil powerhouse, quietly, rapidly, and strategically. By the end, you'll understand why these offshore megaprojects matter more than you think, and why almost no one is talking about them. Let's rewind the clock to just a decade ago. Guyana, a lush green country on the northeastern edge of South America, was known for its sprawling rainforests, rich biodiversity, and gold mines. It wasn't wealthy, it wasn't powerful, it didn't even appear on most global energy radars. For years, the country's economy limped along, heavily dependent on rice, sugar, and bauxite mining, with a GDP under $5 billion and a population of less than 1 million. But then, in 2015, something extraordinary happened. A single offshore discovery, deep in the Atlantic, far from the coast, forever changed the course of Guyana's future. The site was called Liza 1, and it revealed an underground ocean of light, sweet crude. Overnight, global oil giants turned their gaze to Guyana. That single find set off a modern-day oil rush the world hasn't fully grasped yet. And the most incredible part? It's only getting started. How it all began. Before 2015, Guyana was barely a blip in the energy world. The country had no oil production to speak of. There were whispers and rumors of possible reserves off the coast, but nothing concrete. Exploratory drilling had come and gone over the years, mostly ending in disappointment. That changed dramatically when ExxonMobil, together with its partners Hess Corporation and China's state-owned CNOOC, drilled Liza 1 in the Stabroek Block, an enormous 6.6 million-acre stretch of ocean floor. They hit the jackpot, a thick, rich sandstone reservoir with oil so clean and accessible it stunned the industry. News of the find didn't make major headlines. There were no TV specials, no banner headlines across global newspapers. But inside boardrooms and strategy rooms across the energy world, alarms went off. A new oil frontier had opened, one not in the deserts of the Gulf, but in the deep-water Atlantic. That first find was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few years, Exxon and its partners kept drilling and kept winning. By 2024, more than 18 successful discoveries had been made, each unlocking deeper reserves. Fields like Payara, Snook, Turbot, and then the giants, Yellowtail in 2019, Uaru in 2020, and the double whammy of Whiptail 1 and Whiptail 2 in 2021. Collectively, these finds amount to more than 11 billion barrels of recoverable oil, and that number continues to grow. To understand just how insane that number is, consider this. Guyana has more oil per capita than any country in the world. Let that sink in. A nation of 800,000 people sitting atop one of the most valuable caches of oil on Earth. But somehow the global media stayed mostly silent. While places like Venezuela dominated headlines for their oil chaos and Saudi Arabia kept flaunting its reserves, Guyana's discoveries remained buried in trade publications and technical documents. Why? Because the companies involved knew that silence was strategic. Fewer headlines meant fewer protests, fewer questions, and fewer delays. So now you understand how this oil rush began. Quietly, almost stealthily. But if you think the discovery phase was impressive, wait until you see what's happening right now. Because Guyana is no longer just discovering oil. It's pumping it, exporting it, and building an oil empire at full speed. Let's dive into the present. As of 2025, Guyana has moved from exploration to full-blown extraction. 3 mega-projects are underway, each more ambitious than the last. Their names might sound simple: Yellowtail, Uaru, and Whiptail, but what they represent is anything but. These aren't just oil wells. These are billion-dollar engineering marvels, involving some of the largest offshore operations on the planet. At the center of each project is a FPSO, a floating production storage and offloading vessel. Think of them as giant ships, massive, floating cities that extract, process, and store oil in the middle of the ocean. These machines are so complex that building just one can take up to 4 years and cost over $1 billion. Let's start with Yellowtail. Approved in 2022 and reaching full investment commitment by 2024, Yellowtail is Exxon's fourth development in the Stabroek Block. It uses an FPSO named Guyana, designed to pump a jaw-dropping 250,000 barrels per day. By mid-2025, that target is within reach. The subsea infrastructure is nearly complete, with engineers racing to install the SURF systems, subsea umbilicals, risers, and flow lines that connect the seabed to the FPSO. This is not your average oil project. It's a multinational collaboration involving thousands of workers, underwater robots, satellite surveillance, and precision engineering, all 120 miles offshore. Then there's Uaru, a project even bigger and bolder. Approved in 2023, Uaru is Guyana's fifth sanctioned oil development, and it's already making waves. Drilling began just months after approval. Construction of its FPSO is well underway, with first oil expected in 2026. What sets Uaru apart isn't just its size, it's the deeper oil zones uncovered through the Uaru 2 appraisal wells. These zones could contain even richer reservoirs than originally anticipated. This is big. If estimates hold, Uaru could outproduce even Yellowtail. But there's more to the story. Because every new FPSO brings new risks, both ecological and economic. Critics are already questioning the pace of development, raising concerns about how fast Guyana is pushing forward without a solid regulatory framework. And then we arrive at the crown jewel of secrecy, Whiptail. In April 2024, Exxon greenlit a mind-blowing $12.7 billion investment into Whiptail, by far the largest single investment in Guyana's history. That kind of money doesn't just change industries, it changes countries. The FPSO for Whiptail has a fitting name, Jaguar. It's a monster of a vessel, engineered to process another 250,000 barrels per day. The ship is being assembled, drilled, and outfitted even as you watch this video. Most of that work is taking place at a rapidly growing port complex called Vreden Hoop, just west of Georgetown. This site, once a quiet fishing zone, is now a hive of cranes, welding sparks, and oil infrastructure. Fabrication yards, training centers, and logistics bases are popping up, fueled by Guyana's energy gold rush. Add all three projects together, Yellowtail, Uaru, and Whiptail. And Guyana is on track to produce 750,000 barrels of oil per day by 2027. To put that into perspective, that's more daily oil than major producers like Norway, Mexico, or even Iran extract from single offshore projects. That's how big this is. And still, the mainstream news remains quiet. Why? Well, the answer isn't just oil. It lies in politics, power, and control. Because what happens next could change not just Guyana's future, but the entire regional balance of power. But even as offshore rigs rise, FPSOs are deployed, and billions pour into Guyana's ports, the mood within the country remains complicated. On one hand, there is excitement, there's pride. Guyanese citizens are watching their country become a major player on the world stage, almost overnight. Billboards around Georgetown boast slogans like, "Our oil, our future," and national media often reports economic wins with hopeful tones. But beneath the optimism, questions are growing louder. Who really benefits from this boom? Are local communities seeing the rewards, or are foreign investors walking away with most of the treasure? Despite the National Resource Fund, into which Exxon and partners have already contributed over $4.2 billion, some critics argue the wealth is flowing too slowly into public services. Infrastructure projects lag, electricity remains inconsistent in some regions, and unemployment outside the oil sector remains a concern. This is the part of the story that often goes untold, the tension between promise and reality. While oil is transforming the skyline, many everyday Guyanese still await meaningful change in their daily lives. And time is ticking. The country must act fast, because once oil money floods in, the economic risks also multiply. Let's talk about the path ahead, and why Guyana's choices in the next few years could either turn it into an economic model or a cautionary tale. First, the political landscape. Right now, Guyana's government is walking a tightrope. On one side are the massive international oil companies, ExxonMobil, Hess, CNOOC, whose expertise and investment made this boom possible. On the other side are citizens, activists, and economists urging the government to tighten control, renegotiate contracts, and demand better terms. There are concerns that early deals were too generous to the oil majors. Some contracts lock in royalty rates as low as 2%, far below the global average. Critics call them colonial-era agreements in modern clothing. The government has promised reforms. A new petroleum commission has been proposed. Audits are ongoing. But skeptics worry the pace of change is too slow, and that the window to fix things is closing. Next, we face environmental consequences. Exxon insists that all offshore operations meet the highest safety standards. They tout the use of carbon capture technologies, gas reinjection systems, and minimal flaring practices. But environmental groups remain unconvinced. They warn of the looming threat of oil spills, especially given the high-speed development timelines. A single accident could devastate Guyana's vulnerable coastline, home to mangroves, fishing communities, and rare marine life. And unlike major oil nations, Guyana lacks a deep fleet of emergency response ships or cleanup protocols. It is racing forward without a seatbelt. Even without disasters, there are long-term environmental costs. Offshore operations disrupt ecosystems, raise water temperatures, and release pollutants, slowly, invisibly, but consistently. And then there's the economic risk, perhaps the most dangerous of all. It's called Dutch disease, a term economists use to describe what happens when a country becomes overly dependent on a single booming export like oil. Currency values spike, imports become cheap. Domestic industries, agriculture, manufacturing start to collapse. We've seen it before, in Venezuela, in Nigeria, in Angola. Nations awash in oil money suddenly find their economies hollowed out. Corruption rises, institutions weaken, growth stalls. In Guyana's case, the warning signs are already flickering. Farming exports have dropped, the country is importing more than ever, and foreign investment is flooding only into the energy sector, leaving others behind. To avoid this fate, Guyana must act swiftly and strategically. That means diversifying its economy, building strong regulatory systems, investing in education, and ensuring oil wealth translates into broad, inclusive development, not just glossy reports and record-breaking GDP numbers. It also means confronting hard truths about who holds the power, both politically and economically. Now here's where everything changes. Let's talk numbers. Once Yellowtail, Uaru, and Whiptail all reach peak production, sometime between 2025 and 2027, Guyana will be exporting 750,000 barrels of oil every single day. At current prices, that equates to $55 to $60 million a day in oil revenue. Let that sink in. In 24 hours, Guyana could generate more revenue than its entire annual budget used to be just 10 years ago. This isn't theoretical, it's already happening. Oil is now the backbone of the country's economy, and more offshore fields are being explored. Yet, despite this massive shift, there's almost no international coverage. No viral documentaries, no global climate protests, no massive think tank debates. Why? Because silence is profitable. Energy companies have learned a powerful lesson. The less attention a project gets, the smoother it runs. No protesters, no policy delays, no awkward headlines. Everything happens quietly, inside boardrooms and shareholder calls. When the contracts are already signed, the FPSO's already built, and the production well underway. That's when the press releases come out. By then, it's far too late for public debate. And it's not just oil giants. Governments and local elites benefit from this quiet boom too. Money is flowing. Projects are advancing. Who wants the scrutiny? But the cost of this silence? It could be enormous. If Guyana doesn't assert control, if it doesn't ensure transparency, environmental safety, and fair wealth distribution, the country could end up repeating the same mistakes that have haunted other oil-rich nations for decades.
So while the world isn't watching, the stakes couldn't be higher.
So what does all of this mean? It means that Guyana, a nation that once had little voice in global affairs, now finds itself standing at a crossroads. One road leads to transformation, modern infrastructure, cleaner energy, empowered citizens, and real wealth redistribution. The other leads to dependency, pollution, economic volatility, and lost opportunity. And here's the hard truth: the outcome is still undecided. The next few years will determine whether Guyana becomes a symbol of smart development or just another cautionary tale of oil gone wrong. One thing is clear: the rest of the world might not be paying attention, but maybe they should. If you made it this far, it means you care about the untold stories that really shape our world. So take a moment, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because we bring you the narratives that mainstream media often overlooks. And we want to hear from you. Do you believe Guyana's oil boom is a chance at redemption or the beginning of a familiar downfall? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're always listening. And if you want a deeper dive into the money trail, the offshore contracts, or what's really happening with China's involvement in Guyana, let us know. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.